We're starting a new series called Forming Faith. Forming Faith. And it's based around the book of James. And the key idea is this: how do we form an authentic faith that's resilient and not flimsy? How do we form a faith that's gutsy, gritty, growing? One which enables us to handle some of the stuff that comes our way, some of the challenges of life. How do we find a faith that enables us to move mountains where often, if we're honest, we struggle to summon up that mustard seed? And the book of James helps us to find answers to some of these crucial questions. And the author of the book, James, he's the son of Mary and Joseph, so we could say he's the half-brother of Jesus. He's the oldest of Jesus' siblings. And you'd like to imagine, wouldn't you, that being brought up with Jesus all of his life, that he would have been a believer all of his days. But that's just not the case. He came to faith later in life. You know, if you're frustrated by your family's failure to embrace your dreams and your call, bear in mind that James didn't believe in Jesus for many years. But James was one of the earliest people, one of the first people to witness Jesus' resurrection. And he actually ended up becoming a leader in the church in Jerusalem. And James is writing this letter to Jewish believers scattered all over Europe, and he wants to give them practical tips on how to live out their faith well. And in the passage we're going to look at today, the first part of chapter 1, James is giving some top tips on how to handle trials and temptations. So today we're going to look at forming faith under attack. Forming faith under attack. How can your faith grow rather than just survive when life is hard? How can you form a strong faith when life sucks, or when you suck, or both? How's it going to happen? We're going to read James chapter 1, verses 2 to 15. We're going to start off using the NIV translation. I'm going to switch midway to the Message paraphrase, and then I'm going to switch back just to keep you on your toes. So James chapter 1 from verse 2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. That person should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Such a person is double-minded and unstable in all they do. When down and outers get a break, cheer. And when the arrogant rich are brought down to size, cheer. Prosperity is as short-lived as a wildflower, so don't ever count on it. You know that as soon as the sun rises, pouring down its scorching heat, the flower withers, its petals wilt, and before you know it, that beautiful face is a barren stem. Well, that's a picture of the prosperous life. At the moment everyone is looking on in admiration, it fades away to nothing. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life the Lord has promised to those who love him. When tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to death. It gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. This is a meaty passage. It's punchy stuff. And the main focus is on trials and temptations. So what's the difference? Here's my definition. A trial is a difficult experience meant to test and strengthen one's character and faith, while a temptation is an alluring desire that can lead one astray, often originating from the devil or one's own desires. And don't you love that word, alluring? You know, it even sounds slightly sinister and enticing. I love that word. Trials, I think, are often, but not always, external. And temptation, often, but not always, stems from internal desires. Trials can be a great opportunity for growth and development. It can allow you to demonstrate resilience and learn from adversity. Trials can come from various sources. It can be just life, it can be circumstances, it can be God. But temptations, however, are different. They're designed to pull you away from what's right and lead you in sinful or harmful behavior. So both trials and temptations put our faith under attack, and they can cause our faith to flourish or to fail. On Monday, I was due to sit down and start drafting this talk, and I was hit by a whole bundle of trials. I was wrestling with my physical health. I was struggling with the mental health issues. Something had come my way which made me angry, and it was kind of overwhelming me. And then I heard from my sister that her cancer treatment wasn't going as well as we'd hoped for. And then I heard that my brother-in-law had lost his job. And then I heard from a school where I'm one of the directors and heard that the school's been sued for contempt of court. And then I heard from another school where I'm also a board member, where a student had been seriously injured by a tree falling on her very sadly. And I thought, my, oh my. Then I read this passage and James says, consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. And I thought, you know what? I am not feeling joyful. I am not feeling joyful. I was feeling overwhelmed. So the question is, how do we form faith under attack? And two things just to kick us off: perseverance and attitude. Perseverance and attitude. James writes, the testing of your faith develops perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. So when trials come, we've got two choices: persevere or quit. And both can be painful. And attitude is key. James writes, consider it. Consider it. Make this your attitude. It may suck. You may not like it. But you can consider it as a positive thing. On Monday, I just had to sit down in a quiet place and come to the Lord and present each of these issues one by one to Him. And there I found peace. Peace came. Now, sometimes Jesus calms the storm. Sometimes Jesus calms us. And I can guarantee 100% that every single person here is facing some kind of trial. It might be a health issue, yours or others. It could be a bereavement. It could be financial pressure or debt or work issues or lack of work or family conflict or relationship issues. We all face trials. I want to get really practical now. How do we turn these trials into something positive? So that, as James says, we can become mature and complete, not lacking anything. I'm going to offer 4 things. And none of them particularly are a silver bullet. They're not guaranteed to make your life become happily ever after. But I think there's some kind of divine medicine in each of them which will help you to heal. And the first is this: request wisdom. Request wisdom. You know, what not to do is to try and man up. You know, why don't we say woman up? I have no idea. But don't try and man up. Don't try and kind of grit your teeth and tough out the trial. It's not going to work. The reality is we're weak. We're foolish. We need the help of the Holy Spirit. So ask God for wisdom. James says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Request wisdom. Second, remember the past. Build what I call an Ebenezer stone. After a long and difficult battle, Samuel placed a big stone, which he calls an Ebenezer stone, there to remind the Israelites that that was where God showed up. So you need to remember the past. Look back and remind yourself where God has done it before, where God gave you peace, gave you comfort, gave you provision, whatever. And form faith by remembering the past, rather than feeling overwhelmed by today's challenge. Third, rehearse what is true. We need to speak truth over our lives. We need to speak truth over our trials. Don't let your feelings direct your choices. Speak truth. Speak biblical truth. Your grace is sufficient for me. Your power is made perfect in weakness. I can do all things through him who gives me strength. In all things, God works together for good. Maybe you need to just write yourself a list of good, wholesome, biblical declarations and use them when you're facing trials. Form faith by speaking them. Rehearse what's true. And fourth, form faith by refreshing your soul. That will look different for each one of you. Rest, sleep, run, walk, play, listen to worship music, hang out with an encouraging friend. Find things that feed your soul, refresh your soul. Trials hurt. They feel overwhelming. They normally feel unwelcome. And very often we haven't a clue why they come our way. Let me tell you about a time where I had to face a trial which seemed to make no sense to me at all. And back in 2006, I left St Andrews Turi, where I was working. At the time, I returned to the UK. I knew that the then head was very keen that I would take over as head teacher in a year's time when he left. And I knew too that I was very reluctant to do so. I just felt overwhelmed by the idea of becoming a head teacher. But I did a spiritual thing. I said I'd go home, go back to the UK, I'd pray about it. And the next season of life, the next 3 months, were a time where God spoke so clearly. Often I find guidance really difficult. But in that season of life, for those 3 months, God was speaking to me at every moment, in every opportunity, in every possible way. And I absolutely knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I needed to return here to Kenya, to Turi, to become head teacher. And I also knew actually in my heart of hearts, I didn't want to do that. But I knew it was what God wanted. So I applied with a certain level of reluctance. I got the job, and it was mixed feelings, I suppose. But I was certain it was what God wanted. And so I returned to Kenya in August 2007 as head of school. And then just 3 months after I returned, one evening, out of the blue, I took a phone call from my sister. And she told me that out of the blue, our mum had been diagnosed with cancer of the brain and lung, and the doctor said that she couldn't be treated. And so I did what you do. I kind of jumped in a plane. I headed back to the UK. I arrived late at night. Mum was in hospital. I went to her house where I was staying, went in. Cold, empty house, opened the door, and I just wept. Just wept. Oh, God, what is going on? I visited the hospital the next morning to see my mum. The brain tumor had started to affect her memory, so she didn't recognize me. She actually thought I was her ex-husband, which was just bizarre, horrible. I stayed in the UK as long as I could before I headed back here to Kenya. And I spent the next few months shuffling in and out from UK to Kenya as much as I could during holiday time, just spending as much time as I could with my mother. And 7 months after the initial diagnosis, she passed away. And you look at this and you think, how do you explain this? Why was an all-knowing, all-loving God so determined that I should return to Kenya, away from my mother, when he knew full well what was going to happen and how hard I would find the separation? And you know, to this day, I don't have adequate answers. All I can say is that I know my Father's good. I know my Father's loving. I know my Father's got my best interests at heart. And I know that situation sucked. But I also know in my 7 years at head of Turi, God did some beautiful things in some remarkable people. And James says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. You know, I think there's some things we need to stop believing. We need to stop believing that this journey of faith won't involve pain and struggle. It will. And yep, it will involve blessing, but it will involve pain. And we need to stop believing this idea that God won't give us more than we can bear. It's commonly taught in churches, and it's just not true. Listen to what Paul writes to the Corinthian church. We were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired of life itself. If you have seasons like that, you're in good company. That's Paul. But remember this too, Paul again writing to the Corinthian church. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. And the wonderful thing is that Jesus is always with us in our trials, and he will always give us hope. We're coming to a close. This battle between trials and temptations isn't a fight designed for us to handle alone. That's why community matters. You're designed to share my burdens. I'm designed to share yours. I'm designed to help carry your burdens. We can handle these trials together. And the wonderful thing is that when I fall to a familiar temptation yet again, I can and I will find grace. The testing of our faith develops perseverance. And we can learn to consider it pure joy. Not as people who've got it all together, but as a community that's full of broken, struggling people who together can learn to breathe life into each other, pray hope into each other as we form faith under attack.